The subject we are exploring today is the astonishing, really high-octane life and career of Christopher Crosby Farley. He was a performer whose trajectory was just meteoric, yet so tragically brief.
Absolutely. Born in 1964, gone by 1997. The material we've gathered really traces his journey from, these Midwestern roots all the way to the absolute peak of American comedy.
And our goal here, I think, is to really structure this chronologically. We want to appreciate the full context of his work.
Right. We have to go beyond just the famous clips and understand the scope of his talent. I mean, the physical commitment he had to performance was almost unprecedented.
But at the same time, we have to acknowledge the very severe personal battles that cut his career so short.
It's a story where phenomenal creative achievement and this deep personal tragedy are just completely intertwined. You can't separate them.
When you look at his impact, the sources immediately point to what made him so unique. It was that high energy, almost reckless physicality.
He was an athlete of absurdity, really.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It draws comparisons to people like Curly Howard or even the silent film comedian Roscoe Arbuckle.
And that other comparison,
Yeah.
the one that sort of shadowed his entire career.
John Belushi.
John Belushi. Both were these groundbreaking SNL legends known for explosive energy, a tendency towards self-destruction, and, both died at 33.
And it wasn't just an observation people made after he died, was it?
No, not at all. This was a ghost he wrestled with his whole adult life. It was a narrative that the public, and sadly Farley himself, seemed acutely aware of.
So let's start at the very beginning to set the scene for where this incredible performer came from. Christopher Crosby Farley, born February 15th, 1964, in Madison, Wisconsin.
That's right. He grew up nearby in a wealthy suburb called Maple Bluff.
And what do we know about his family life, those foundations?
It was a very traditional, stable Midwestern upbringing.
Yeah.
A large, successful Irish-American family. His father, Thomas John Farley Sr., owned the Scotch Oil Company, which was a significant local business.
And his mother.
His mother, Mary Ann, was a homemaker. Chris was one of 5 siblings, and it's interesting to note the family's broader success. His cousin Jim Farley is now the CEO of Ford Motor Company.
So there was a real grounding in industry and achievement there.
Definitely. And also in education and faith, which might seem surprising given his later stage persona.
Right, it's quite a contrast.
He attended parochial schools, Edgewood High School of the Sacred Heart, and this connection to his faith, it wasn't just a childhood thing. A fellow cast member from Second City, Joel Murray, mentioned that even in the chaos of Chicago, Chris would always make it to Mass.
So there was this quiet internal stability that maybe contrasted with all the external turmoil.
I think that's a very fair way to look at it. After high school, he went to Marquette University, and that seems to be where things really started to crystallize for him.
Okay.
He graduated in '86 with a double major in communications and theater. But, and this is significant, he was also heavily involved in rugby union.
Rugby. That seems fitting somehow.
It's cited as being absolutely instrumental. It fostered his love of performance and especially physical comedy. The explosive power, the resilience you need for rugby. He combined that with his formal theater training.
It's fascinating. You can almost see how those two worlds created his signature style.
Absolutely. The sources say he drew direct material from it. Some of the intense physical mannerisms from his famous sketches, they came from watching his rugby teammates.
So after he graduated, he did a brief stint working for his father's company.
Yes, the Scotch Oil Company. It feels almost obligatory, But the pull of comedy was just too strong.
He couldn't stay in Madison.
No. He started his training at the Arc Improv Theater there, but he knew he had to get to Chicago. So he trained at Improv Olympic, and then he made that crucial leap to the main stage of the Second City.
And that move in 1989, it put him right in the mix with a whole generation of future comedy legends.
Instantly. He joined the main stage on the exact same day as Stephen Colbert. He was working with people like Bob Odenkirk, who would be so important for his characters. He did 3 reviews there. The Gods Must Be Lazy, It Was 30 Years Ago Today, and Flag Smoking Permitted in Lobby Only or Sensorama. That environment was the furnace that prepared him for network television.
And there's a little anecdote from that time, before he was a household name. An early audition that didn't go his way.
Yes, a fun little footnote. He tried out for a small part in the movie Home Alone.
No way.
Yeah, for the role of a mall Santa. He didn't get it. The director, Chris Columbus, just decided he wasn't the right fit. It's just a reminder that even a talent like his had to face that kind of everyday rejection.
But by 1990, the grinding stopped. He was in first as a new cast member for Saturday Night Live.
Alongside Chris Rock. It was a huge moment for the show.
And he quickly became part of what people called the bad boys of SNL.
A cohort that really defined the show's energy for half a decade. That group was incredibly tight-knit. You had Chris Rock, Adam Sandler, Tim Meadows, Rob Schneider, and of course David Spade.
And the characters he created in those 5 years became just instant phenomena. We have to start with Matt Foley, the motivational speaker.
Matt Foley is probably his most enduring character from that period, and it's all because of the sheer physical commitment.
You can't just describe him, you have to describe the energy.
Exactly. He's constantly adjusting his belt, sweating, crashing through tables, and that voice, that high-pitched manic voice warning everyone they'll end up living in a van down by the river.
It was like watching an athletic event. And the origin of that character is a perfect example of that Chicago comedy incubator.
It is. It wasn't even his creation initially. Bob Odenkirk came up with the concept at Second City.
Oh, interesting.
But the name Matt Foley, that came from a real-life friend of Farley's, a Catholic priest who came to one of the shows. Farley just loved the sound of it and refused to change it after that night.
And the physicality, we mentioned rugby earlier. Where did those specific movements come from?
This is where the details are so great. He synthesized them from real life.
Yeah.
That low, intense squat. That came from his high school football coach, giving aggressive pep talks.
Wow.
He combined that with defensive stances he saw in rugby, and even the cadence his own father would use when he was genuinely angry. It gave the character this manic authenticity that made the absurdity just land so much harder.
And part of what makes those sketches so memorable are the reactions from the other actors. They could not keep it together.
That's a crucial point. People remember David Spade and Christina Applegate just covering their mouths, trying not to laugh.
Right.
And that wasn't bad acting. It showed the uncontrollable, anarchic energy Farley brought. The physical shocks were so powerful that they just bypassed the training of professional actors. It told the audience they were seeing something genuinely unpredictable.
Then you had another set of beloved recurring characters, Bill Swersky's superfans.
Which really cemented his ability to embody a specific cultural persona. He played Todd O'Connor, one of those stereotypical, intensely devoted Chicago sports fans.
With the constant shouting of "Da Bears."
Exactly. It kind of defined a certain working-class Chicago identity for a national audience, all delivered with that signature Farley volume.
While Foley showed his energy and the superfans showed his specificity, the Chippendales Dancer sketch with Patrick Swayze. That's often seen as the absolute pinnacle.
It's arguably his most complex piece of physical comedy on the show. The genius was the contrast.
You had Swayze, the classically toned dancer and movie star.
Pitted against Farley, who was overweight and already dealing with health issues. And they're auditioning for the same spot.
But Farley performs with the same shocking level of commitment as Swayze.
He does. And that's what transcends the simple shock value. It was a study in pathos. He used his own physical reality as a comedic tool, performing the moves with this almost devastating commitment. It made you laugh, but it also made you a little uncomfortable.
It suggested a self-aware sadness, almost.
Exactly. It set him apart from purely cartoonish performers.
And beyond those major characters, he had so many other memorable recurring bits.
Oh yeah, the Gap Girls, with him, Spade, and Sandler in drag. He played the lunch lady in Adam Sandler's Lunch Ladyland song.
Bennett Brower on Weekend Update.
With the air quotes, yes, divulging these grotesque personal details. And then the Chris Farley show, which was so meta.
Right, where he played this incredibly awkward version of himself interviewing celebrities.
Leading right into the comedy of intense discomfort. It was brilliant.
His versatility also came through in his impersonations.
And again, it wasn't just about the voice. He captured the energy of the person he was playing.
Like Tom Arnold.
Tom Arnold, who later gave his eulogy. Or political figures like Rush Limbaugh and Newt Gingrich, even Jerry Garcia. He injected this hyper-real intensity into every single one.
Now, we also have to touch on the other side of that SNL era, the off-screen antics, which were pretty notorious.
The sources are pretty clear that the behavior was often highly immature and disruptive. There were late-night prank phone calls with Adam Sandler.
I've heard about these.
Where Sandler would use an old woman's voice, and Farley would just pass gas into the phone.
And it extended to physical stunts, often involving nudity.
Yes. His commitment to shock value didn't end on stage. He was known for stripping naked to get a laugh, mooning cars, imitating Jane Buffalo Bill Gum. Chris Rock made a comment once that he probably saw Farley's genitals more than his girlfriend did.
It paints a picture of someone who couldn't really turn it off.
It suggests an internal mechanism that just couldn't differentiate between the stage and real life. The impulse was always there.
And despite this massive, chaotic, influential run, his time at SNL came to a really abrupt end in 1995.
He and Adam Sandler were both fired by NBC. And that really marked the end of that era and launched them both fully into their film careers.
The pivot to movies was immediate for him, though. He'd already been doing small parts.
That was key. His debut was in Wayne's World in '92. He followed that with Coneheads, Wayne's World 2, Airheads, and that great uncredited part as the bus driver in Billy Madison.
So he was already getting comfortable on film sets.
Right, but the real test was after SNL, when he was the star, often with David Spade.
And that partnership was huge.
Incredibly lucrative. Tommy Boy and Black Sheep cemented him as a bankable star. They each made around $32 million domestically, which was a big deal then, and built this massive cult following on video.
And they won an MTV Movie Award for Best On-Screen Duo.
They did. But that period of professional success was shattered by a really escalating personal crisis.
And the sources suggest it was actually professional dissatisfaction with Black Sheep that triggered a severe relapse.
That's a critical insight. He was reportedly really unhappy with that movie. He felt the studio rushed it just to replicate the success of Tommy Boy. The script was barely 60 pages long when they greenlit it.
So he felt creatively compromised.
Deeply. And that led directly to a relapse on the night of the premiere.
Which then had immediate consequences for his next film.
Precisely. He had to go into rehab before he could even start Beverly Hills Ninja. But even with all that chaos, the movie opened at #1 at the box office. His connection with the audience was still incredibly strong.
Then there are the final films, the ones released after he died.
Yes. Almost Heroes and Dirty Work, which featured his uncredited final film role. Both came out in 1998.
So if his completed filmography is impressive, the list of what could have been is just staggering. It's a painful reminder of his potential. And we have to start with Shrek.
The Shrek role. It's the great cinematic what if.
Yeah.
He was the original voice of Shrek. He had recorded about 85% of the dialogue before he passed away.
And the character was supposed to be completely different from the one we know.
Totally different. The original Shrek was designed to be much more like Farley himself. He was described as humble, bumbling, innocent, a reluctant hero.
Not the gruff Scottish ogre.
No. When Mike Myers took over, he insisted on a complete rewrite, which is where the accent and the more aggressive persona came from.
And the attempt to finish the original recording is just a heartbreaking story.
It really is. The studio approached his brother, John Farley, whose voice is almost identical to Chris's. They asked him to finish the last few lines.
And he couldn't do it.
He later said he wished he had, for Chris. But at the time, it was just too emotionally overwhelming.
And Shrek wasn't the only animated project.
No, he was also cast in the Disney movie Dinosaur. He was supposed to play a young male brachiosaurus named Sorbus, who was afraid of heights. After his death, they completely rewrote the character into an elderly female Baleen, voiced by Joan Plowright.
Beyond animation, it seems like he was actively looking for more ambitious, even dramatic roles.
This is maybe the most tantalizing part of his unfulfilled potential. He was in talks for a project with Vince Vaughn called The Gelfin. But more significantly, he was in talks to star in a biopic about the silent film comedian Fatty Arbuckle.
Wow.
And the script was going to be written by David Mamet.
David Mamet.
Yeah, it shows a conscious effort to move beyond what he was known for into something much more challenging and layered.
And then there's the grim association with the so-called cursed roles.
This is one of the most sobering details.
Yeah.
He was attached to star in adaptations of two novels, A Confederacy of Dunces and The Incomparable Atuk. The chilling part is that John Belushi and John Candy were also attached to those same projects at different times. And all three of them died before either film could get made.
Just an awful coincidence. And there were other roles that went to big names.
Yes. The part in The Cable Guy went to Jim Carrey because Farley had a scheduling conflict with Black Sheep. And a part written for him in Adam Sandler's Grown Ups eventually went to Kevin James.
And just before he died, he was planning another film with David Spade.
That's right. Just 2 months before he passed, they were talking about a third movie. There was a script called Tree, about a White House employee and a quirky truck driver. It's presumed Farley would have played the truck driver.
It shows their partnership was still very much alive.
And forward-looking, yeah.
As we shift to discussing his final years, we really have to approach this with sympathy. The sources are so clear. His adult life was just a relentless battle with obesity, alcoholism, and drug addiction.
It has to be seen as a serious chronic health crisis. And it was so public, it got to the point where Lorne Michaels had to intervene at SNL, briefly suspending him.
He was drawing a parallel to the issues with Belushi.
Exactly. He had very strict rules, and he basically told Farley he had to get help or he was fired for good.
And the attempts to manage it were constant.
That's the most heartbreaking detail in the sources. His manager, Bernie Brillstein, repeatedly sent him to rehab. In the final years of his life, Chris Farley sought treatment for his weight and substance abuse 17 separate times.
17. That number just,
Yeah.
it captures the agonizing cycle he was in.
It does. A cycle of sobriety, relapse, and just desperate attempts to get well.
And by 1997, his decline was very visible to the public.
It was distressing. He did a guest spot on the kids' show, all that. And his physical comedy was minimal. You could see he was laboring, breathing heavily just to get through it. The energy that defined him was now fighting against his own body.
This all culminated in his final hosting gig on Saturday Night Live in October of '97.
The atmosphere backstage was apparently incredibly tense. The cold open to the show was basically about the situation.
Lorne Michaels was in it, right, expressing doubt.
Yeah, and Tim Meadows had to step in and advocate for him, promising he'd be focused, that his party days were over. They even had Chevy Chase on as his sponsor for this sketch.
But the anxiety behind the scenes was very real.
Extremely real. The sources confirmed that Chris Rock was on standby, ready to host the show himself if Farley couldn't get through the broadcast.
Wow.
And watching the episode, his physical state is just. It's distressing. His voice was hoarse, he was flushed, visibly out of breath all night. It was a very public display of a man at his breaking point.
And that battle reached its tragic conclusion not long after.
On December 18th, 1997, Chris Farley was found dead in his Chicago apartment by his younger brother, John. He was only 33 years old.
Just an immense loss.
Devastating. The autopsy confirmed he died from an overdose of a speedball, a mix of cocaine and heroin.
But there were other factors, weren't there?
Yes, and it's essential to note this. The medical examiner also cited advanced atherosclerosis, which is severe hardening of the arteries, as well as asthma and type 2 diabetes as significant contributing factors. His body was already in a state of crisis.
His funeral reflected the huge impact he'd had.
It did. It was held on December 23rd in Madison. Over 500 people attended, including a huge gathering of his peers from the industry.
Can you give us an idea of who was there?
It's a real who's who of comedy at the time. Lorne Michaels, Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, Phil Hartman, Dan Aykroyd, Rob Schneider, John Goodman, Bob Odenkirk. Just a massive show of love and respect.
But there was one very noticeable absence that caused a lot of speculation.
David Spade, which led to all these rumors that they'd had a falling out.
Which he later denied.
He did. Years later, he explained that he just found the whole thing too emotionally overwhelming to attend. It would have been too devastating for him.
And throughout all of this, the comparison to his idol, John Belushi, is just inescapable.
The parallel is tragic, and it's definitive. The explosive talent, the public struggle, the early death at 33 from a similar overdose. It reinforces that image of the brilliant comedian burning out way too fast.
But even with that abrupt end, his recognition has only grown over time.
Absolutely. He got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2005. His brother wrote an authorized biography, The Chris Farley Show. He's been honored in music.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers song.
Purple Stain, yeah. With that line, Farley's an angel and I can prove this, it's very affecting.
And his life is still being examined in documentaries and now a major biopic.
The documentary I Am Chris Farley came out in 2015, and now a major film is in the works. It's set to star Paul Walter Hauser, be directed by Josh Gad, and produced by Lorne Michaels. It shows how much his story still resonates.
And maybe the most emotional tribute came from Adam Sandler.
It's so raw and personal. In his 2018 Netflix special, he performed this incredibly moving song he wrote just for Farley. And then he performed it live when he hosted SNL in 2019.
Right on that stage.
Honoring their friendship in the very place where it all began.
So when we look at all this material, Chris Farley's story is just. It's one of immense talent, rooted in this explosive physical comedy, but constantly contested by an equally intense and unrelenting personal struggle.
And we have to see that duality as the central conflict of his life. The performer who brought so much joy was the same man who sought professional help 17 times in his final years. It's a powerful, sobering story.
And when you look at that incredible list of what he left unfinished, the Shrek voice work, the potential of a dramatic role written by David Mamet, it suggests an artist who was right on the cusp of a massive evolution.
He was ready to transcend that persona that made him famous.
Which leads to a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe contemplate.
Okay.
Based on everything we know about his unfulfilled career, especially the character in that original Shrek script and the move toward more dramatic roles, what unique and lasting impact might Chris Farley have had on mainstream cinema if he had lived to explore those non-physical, non-SNL parts he was pursuing? That untapped potential, it's certainly something to think about.
Indeed.
Thanks for listening.